Welcome to Pan-African Attitude Episode 2. We are here to talk about one of the most complicated, severe, and long-running crises. Coincidentally, it's also one of the most ignored, the Congo crisis. Well, this is an emergency podcast because of the emergency situation in the Congo. Frankly, we believe here at African Stream that this should not just concern Africans, but everyone across the world. The eastern part of DRC is a battleground. And this is because of the escalation of violence between M23 rebel group and the Congolese army. We've had weeks of bombs and rockets being dropped in markets and universities, and civilians are in between. So the largest city in eastern DRC, which is Goma, in North Kivu province, it's a city of about 2 million people. There are fears that that city might fall to rebels, and the conflict and the humanitarian crisis might worsen. So to help us unpack this topic is two special guests from the Friends of Congo. Please welcome Maurice Carney. He's one of the co-founders of the Friends of Congo. He currently serves as the organization's executive director. He's a Pan-Africanist who has led a Pan-African solidarity movement for over 2 decades in support of a free and liberated Congo, in the spirit of the first Prime Minister of the country, Patrice Emery Lumumba. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And we are also joined by Kambale Musavuli, a political analyst at the Center for Research on the Congo-Kinshasa. He currently serves as the West Africa representative for Pan-Africanism Today's Secretariat from his base in Accra, Ghana. His work analyzes Kwame Nkrumah's 7-year development plan and the evolving political scene in West Africa. In addition to his advocacy, he's a skilled technologist and techno-activist, focusing on cybersecurity training for African institutions. Welcome, Kabale.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get the show on the road. My question is to you, Maurice. Why is the world ignorant of the Congo crisis?
Thanks for the question. There's several reasons why there is less attention paid to the Congo than other parts of the world. In fact, Congo is sometimes referred to as empire of silence. We've seen movies made about it. And the silence around the Congo, the ignorance around the Congo is not only a contemporary one, but it's also a historic one, especially considering the role that Congo has played in the 500-year tragedy of people of African ancestry. You're talking about the most devastating occurrence as it relates to people of African ancestry. That is the trafficking of Africans from the continent to the Americas. Congo was a major factor in that, the Congo region. According to Emory University's slavery database, almost half of the Africans that were trafficked from the continent to the Americas came out of the Congo region, the Central Africa region. They said 4 out of every 10 Africans that were trafficked, according to their database. So if we look at from the 1500s, right up to the present, you fast forward about 300 plus years, we see again Congo being central to the drama of Africans. The Berlin Conference, 1884-1885, was also known as the Congo Conference. And it is there that Congo was given to King Leopold II as his own personal property. And within a 23-year period from 1885 to 1908, Congolese population was decimated by half. An estimated 10 million Congolese perished as the king extracted rubber and ivory to feed Western industry, right? So we know about the Holocaust in Germany. Some people may even know about the Armenian genocide, but very few people know about the role that King Leopold played in decimating the Congolese population by half. So historically, the centrality of Congo historically has been silenced. By the same token, contemporary Congo has also been silenced, where we see since 1996, an estimated 6 million Congolese have perished as a result, in large part, of the scramble for Congo's resources. Now, why is it that we know so very little about the Congo. A major part of it is because of the global interests that are engaged. The United States is one of the primary beneficiaries of the instability of the Congo. And the United States government is also one of the key causes of the instability that we see in the Congo today. We cannot discuss the instability in the Congo today without discussing the largest covert action that was mounted by the United States in the 1960s to overthrow the democratically elected Prime Minister Patrice Emery Lumumba. And that set the stage for what we see today, in that Lumumba wasn't only overthrown, but the democratic movement that he was leading was eviscerated, dismantled. And then the United States imposed a dictatorship over the Congolese people for over 3 decades. So that role the United States has played and continued to play in today's instability, where the U.S. in 1996 backed an invasion of the Congo by U.S. allies, primarily Rwanda and Uganda, and then again in 1998 backed a second invasion, which triggered what the United Nations says the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II. So, great power interest, the United States, is on the wrong side of history in the Congo. And when the United States interests are at stake in a country and the U.S. is on the wrong side of history or on the wrong side of the moral equation, we find that the corporate media is more or less silent about what is taking place in that sphere where the U.S. is operating. So that's one reason, because the U.S. interests are involved, and the corporate media are not too quick to shine a light on what's unfolding there. Secondly, there's this the preconceived notion about Congo and Africa. See, the continent is often referred to by white supremacists as a dark continent, and the Congo represents the heart of darkness. Right, we're tapping into Joseph Conrad's classic novel, Heart of Darkness. So whatever happens there, people figure, oh, it's Africans. They've always killed each other, and they'll continue to kill each other. They attribute these atavistic qualities to Africans, and they see Africans in the heart of Africa embodying those qualities. So you really can't do anything about it. If there are mass deaths, if there are rapes and they're killing, oh, that's what Africans do, right? Because that's the preconceived notion that's being fulfilled by the realities that are occurring on the ground. A third reason is there's a language barrier, right? It's predominantly French speaking, so the news that's coming out is not coming out into the English speaking world. So that's also a factor. And the fourth is that it's not so cut and dry, right? If we look at the situation today, we know that Israel is bombing Palestine and bombing Gaza and committing a genocide. So Israel, the bad guys, the Palestinians, the good guys. Israel, the oppressor, the Palestinians, the victims. So they're very, very clear and very stark. It's a little bit more complicated in the Congo. And it's not as dramatic. The conflict is drawn out. It's been now a quarter century. So things move slower. And in today's world of, the bombs and things moving fast and just everything moving quickly, it doesn't gain as much traction. And then finally, the architects, the perpetrators who are committing the main perpetrators, like the president of Rwanda, the president of Paul Kagame, president of Rwanda, the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, they benefit from imperial privilege. They're allies of the United States, allies of the United Kingdom. So the crimes that they commit in the Congo, all right, the crimes they've committed for the last quarter century. What the U.S. does is that it runs diplomatic, it runs political interference, so that they're not held to be account. In addition to that, they hold these leaders up, contrary to their practices in the region. They hold them up as the beacon of hope for Africa. President Clinton dubbed them the new breed of African leaders, the Renaissance leaders, Pan-African leaders. So it creates this propaganda that's out there, makes it difficult for people to cut through it to see what's really happening and see that, hey, these guys are really the bad guys. They have the blood of millions of Africans on their hands. They've invaded and plundered and led a war of aggression and plunder against another African nation for a quarter century. But with the massive propaganda from the West, it's a little more difficult for you to get to the bottom of that. So those are some of the reasons why there is just such this silence around the Congo, and the atrocities that are occurring there do not really get out into the masses.
Thank you, thank you. And now you've briefly mentioned that these major mainstream organizations have been slow to pick up on news coming out of the Congo, and I sort of find it odd considering the amount of resources that the likes of CNN, BBC, MSNBC have at their disposal. So outside of the mainstream on social media, Instagram, Twitter, we have seen horrific images of mothers slashed, very young children crying at the foot of their mothers' bodies, houses torched. But this is not really coming out in what we'll call Western mainstream media. So you've only briefly mentioned it, but do you mind maybe expanding a bit onto why this is the case, onto why we aren't seeing as much of what's happening in Congo as we should have?
Oh, that question is for me or it's for Kambali?
Either of you is fine.
I just go ahead, Kambali. You can jump in.
I mean, why aren't the images, right, getting into mainstream media? I think Maurice already touched onto it, but specifically for the context of Africa, I'll share a story of a Ugandan journalist I know. He works at Voice of America, strangely, but he was actually in the northeast of the DRC during the killings that took place that has made a warlord named Bosco Tanganda be at the International Criminal Court right now, right? And this killing was done between two ethnic tribes, the Lendu versus the Hema, and that's the narrative they pushed. But this journalist was on the ground, right? He filmed. He actually also took his footage, and his footage was used at the ICC as testimony. While he knew what was actually taking place, when he does the coverage, he will not say something that was against the political line of Voice of America. So he will come to the news and say that the situation in the Congo is an ethnic conflict. But when I sit down with him and speak to him, he will explain to me how Thomas Lubanga, how the others, right, were actually massacring villages to villages. And he could not understand why they would not stop them from these massacres. But he knew it was not an ethnic conflict. He knew the specific militia group committing the crimes. And he also had the video. But why? The editors, right? The editors choose these, they keep this narrative. And that's sometimes what's frustrating me when I read the news about the Congo. And sometimes even I'm frustrated by African media. One of them this week, during the African Cup, made a post about the Congo, because I'm sure all of us saw the Congolese players the semifinal and the action that it took. So one of the major Instagram social media page made a post about the Congo, and I was very disturbed by the post. Right, this is an African media platform which has close to 1 million followers online, stated the narrative that's shared pretty much by the status quo, that the Rwandan government is then denying supporting the M23, yet says that the reason why they are in the Congo is because of going after ethnic Hutus who were responsible for the Rwandan genocide. That's a very problematic statement, especially for a media platform that has close to 1 million followers, mostly young Africans. And I challenged that post, right? I said, you can't even, in the era where, I will use the context of East Africa, right? Many of us have friends who work in Rwanda, who live in Rwanda. We know that in Rwanda, the President Kagame said there are no more ethnic groups, right? Every Rwandan is Hutu and Tutsi, right? You can't mention that name, but we are all Rwandans. So when you say ethnic Hutu rebels in Congo, who are these ethnic Hutu rebels? Are they Congolese? Are they Rwandans? Right? So you already get into the narrative that this is an ethnic conflict, not even understanding that these ethnic Hutus are Rwandans. And if we even go to the logic of, let's say, right, these ethnic Hutus have committed genocide in 1994. Right? We are in 2024. So if they did commit, and let's say that in 1994, they were in their 30s, right? Young, 30-year-old, genocidaire killing Rwandans. Okay. 30 years later, these 30-year-old are in the 60s, correct? So are we saying that we have 60-year-old old men running in the Congo with guns, threatening Rwanda's security, right? But this line, since the beginning of the war in the Congo from 1996, now, as a Congolese, I have seen that every single year. Rwanda is not in Congo, right? Rwanda, if Rwanda is in Congo, it's for security reasons, right? To go after those who committed genocide, and they've run that story for 30 years, while media, mainstream media, and even some African medias are not challenging and saying, wait a minute, these are not 60-year-old kill, no, it's threatening. These are young Rwandans, and there is a fundamental problem that these Rwandans who have come to the Congo since 1994 at the end of the genocide, 1.2 million of them came, and many of them have never returned, and many of them, right, up to 200,000 that we can say today, were killed in the Congo by the Rwanda Defense Force. For the rigorousness of the rigor needed for the media to go after the stories, as Howard Frank said in one of the interviews we did with him for Crisis in the Congo, was saying that the situation in Congo is complex, but it can be understood. It just requires a little rigor, a little questioning, right? To say, are 100 million Congolese, who, I will go to what most Africans know, who have given Africa one of the best cultural elements, which is Congolese music. Every African party I've gone to, you have listened to Congolese music, right? Are these people just so criminal that they are killing 6 million people? No, that's not the case. So what is happening? And getting courageous journalists to start writing, to start covering, and telling the narrative of the Congolese. If it wasn't for the soccer players in the Congo at the African Cup of Nations, many Africans will not even question what was happening. That the Congolese, after 30 years of conflict, right? Almost 30 years, went to what I would call an international stage and made a call to us, said the situation in the Congo is an emergency, it's a genocide. They didn't name names. They made a sign to tell people, we can't be silent now. And history will judge us to say, when the Congolese called for help to the entire African continent, did we mobilize to end the genocide? And this is the time for us to do so.
Thank you so much, Kambale, for that analysis. And of course, much later, we're going to discuss at length the issue of the Hutus and the Rwanda genocides and these rebels that are purportedly in Congo. And just to follow up, and probably this still goes out to you, Kambale, seeing as you represent, of course, the PAT organization, which, of course, fights for Africa's dignity and Africa's sovereignty. And we have seen that previously in 1884, when we had the scramble and partition of Africa in Berlin, most of the imperialists or colonizers who are coming into Africa were coming in because of the natural resources that Africans had and how these resources were going to benefit Europe. And we have seen this in many books, like Walter Rodney writes about how Europe underdeveloped Africa. Now, when we look at this and also when we focus on that, how Europe underdeveloped Africa but still continues to underdevelop Africa, I just want to shed some light on the wealth and the mineral resources in Congo. which is estimated at a whooping 24 trillion USD. And we see a lot of minerals in the Congo, such as gold. We see cobalt, and in the cobalt, that we have in DRC, it is more than all the cobalt that we have in the world combined. And of course, this cobalt is used in the making of phones, in the making of laptops. We see big companies like Apple and Tesla, Microsoft, Intel, who actually pay for the services of child labor that go on in Congo, and have contributed to, one, the war that is going on, two, the child labor that is going on, three, the conflict that is going on in the Congo, that is never ending. We see that in the year 2000 to the year 2022, there has been an increase in the manufacture of phones from the cobalt in Congo by more than 10%. And of course, all these have been distributed and sold out. And we do not see the Democratic Republic of Congo benefiting from any of this wealth. We see so much war that is there. We see internally displaced people. We are seeing so much poverty. So my first question that goes out to you, Kambale, is how does the DRC Congo, and also us as Africans, be able to get ourselves out of these imperialist powers and global powers that are actually perpetrating the war in the DRC? And this is a two-phrase question. And the second one, of course, because of this war, we are seeing a lot of young people who are frustrated, who have lost hope, and who are now rebelling against the Western powers. What is your take on the young people who are rebelling on these Western powers? But also, how does the DRC and the rest of Africa unshackle themselves from these imperialists and the neo-colonialists and the global powers that are bringing in war, for them to be able to benefit from their minerals and their wealth?
It's a question of sovereignty. The fundamental question for us is how we're going to control our land and resources. And this is why I also follow the ideas of Kwame Nkrumah. Patrice Lumumba also fought for that, right? How can the Congolese control their land and resources? There have been some indications in the Congo of a movement, right, for people to actually control their land and resources legally through mining reform. I was pleasantly surprised to hear one of the ministers in Mali, as they were discussing the revision of the mining code, that took inspirations to the movement in the DRC around revision of how people benefit from that. But the context that you shared, right, need to be put in two ways. One, the exploitation, the direct exploitation by mining companies, and two, the pilfering of Congo's resources illegal. You mentioned Apple and Tesla, and I will go directly to Tesla. I am still surprised today that Tesla has not been held accountable for exploiting the Congo. And I will just share the direct line of how we can hold them accountable. Tesla gets its cobalt directly from a company called Glencore. Glencore is a Swiss registered company. Used to have a South African as the head, by the way, right? I think his name was Glassenberg. Glassenberg, the South African, was the head of Glencore, while the South African apartheid-born guy, Elon Musk, was also the head of Tesla. Glencore got its mine from an Israeli businessman named Dan Gertler. Right? And Dan Gertler was, and is still under investigation in the United States, right? And I'll bring up one specific case. Sometimes we'll look at what's happening in the Congo. You say, these are the Africans on their own. There is a firm, right, a hedge fund in the United States called Huckshift. They've changed their name now. I can't remember what is the new name now. So Huckshift, a hedge fund in New York City, Wall Street, was dealing with Israeli businessman Dan Gertler to get access to mines in DRC. And they were bribing him and Congolese officials, two Congolese officials, the president of the Congo, Joseph Kabila, and his advisor, Augustin Katumba Mwanke. The way we know this is because in the end of the trial that was brought in by the Department of Justice, Huckshift was found guilty of bribing African governments, including the Congo. So it wasn't just Congo. I think it was also Equatorial Guinea and another country. And Glencore got its mine, right, through the hands of Dan Gertler as well. So Dan Gertler has been mentioned in the US court. They hid his name, right? They didn't mention his name, but when you read the judgment, you can see that they are talking about the Israeli businessman with close tie with the president of the Congo. Just blood his name.
Yes.
Certainly, they sanctioned him. Right? He has US sanctions for many of his dealings, illegal dealings, bribing Congolese politicians, getting mines a penny on the dollar and reselling it to the London stock markets, all the corrupt practices that he's done in the DRC. No, he's been sanctioned. So with US sanctions, his bank accounts are frozen. Right? So Glencore, in the deal that they have with him, because he sold them a mine, is that he's supposed to receive 3% royalties for any sale of cobalt that he does. Up until today, unless Glencore come out and say they have stopped, we are clear that Glencore continued to give him almost $250,000. If I'm not mistaken, it's about $250,000 or something, $1 million a day that he get of royalties on Congo's cobalt till today. But how and who Glencore sells his cobalt to? Tesla. Tesla gets his cobalt directly from Glencore, which is providing an Israeli businessman, right, money, and the money that he's getting, he invests in 2 construction companies registered in Canada, building the wall and settlements in Palestine. And most people don't make that connection. So if we know that there is a company that is giving what I would say illegal money to an Israeli businessman, taking Congo's cobalt, a penny on the dollar, giving it to Tesla, and then this guy is gonna think that he's the genius, right? That he can just make metal exploded from the people and then making it available to consumers without any repercussion. Oh, there hasn't been that many traction around it. I know there is a trial, an American lawyer in Washington, D.C. who's taking to task Apple and Tesla. But Tesla, for me, is one of the most important cases because the direct linking exists. Right? Tesla get his cobalt from Glencore. Glencore got his mine from Dan Gertler, the Israeli businessman, who is under U.S. sanction and continue to receive royalties over it. But beyond cobalt, even though you said that Congo has the vast majority of the cobalt in the world, 70% of the world production is in the DRC, we are not even discussing lithium yet, right? Lithium has been discovered in the Congo. The largest lithium, one of the largest lithium reserves in the world is found in Manono, right? And Manono is close to a city called Kolwezi. Growing up in Congo, Kolwezi did not have an international airport. Today, you can fly from around the world directly to Kolwezi. They have a fantastic airport there. And the expectation is actually taking place now in Kolwezi. It's almost as the El Dorado of 2024, where everyone is going. So for me, we can go minerals to minerals. We can talk about copper. We can talk about diamonds, who controls the diamond industry. We can talk about cobalt. But in the end is that the Congolese people on the international level are not controlling their wealth. So their battle, just as is Mali, in Niger and Burkina Faso, who are demanding greater share of the wealth, is also what the Congolese people need. And all the mechanism that's needed for Congolese to get a greater share is the discussion, right? It's not, I don't subscribe to the notion of we need to certify Congo's minerals, right? So that we can see where it's coming from. It's not exploiting children. I don't subscribe to that notion because it does not address the question of sovereignty, the question of who controls the wealth. And even in this movement, right, there are people who are calling for that. The United States has an answer to that. You know what the United States is doing? They are
What?
investing billions of dollars to build
Mm-hmm.
railroads from the Katanga province
Mm-hmm.
all the way to Angola. They're calling it the
Yes.
Lobito Corridor, so that they will tell people we have mechanized the exploitation of Congo's copper. We have mechanized the process
Mm-hmm.
of getting access to Congo's cobalt. And we
Mm-hmm.
know how it's coming from the machine on the ground to the trains to the railroad we built and taking it out of the Atlantic, while Congolese are still making a penny on the dollar and still have no control of their land and resources. For our fight,
Kambale, Kambale, I'll just stop you for a bit to just maybe wrap up a bit with how do the DRC especially unshackle themselves from these global powers to ensure that they are the people who actually have control of their own wealth and that it actually serves them as a country.
Congo is in Africa, and Congo doesn't just belong to the Congolese, it belongs to the entire African continent. It's as we say, a patrimony of the African continent. Congolese are fighting. You said it even with the protests in front of the Western embassies, right? And they've had this history of struggle. They're facing a brutal regime, their own local government. But while they fight on the outside, they also depend on everyone. They're fighting on the inside, they depend on everyone on the outside to support the struggle. Wherever you are, put pressure on your government to be on the support of the Congolese, be it on international stages, be it at the African Union, the SADC platform, ESC. Bring up cases, right? And in terms of the case, the one call that we get for Dr. Mukwege, our Nobel Peace Prize, is that he believes until there is justice, this question of Congo's conflict is going to continue. Because those who are committing the crimes, right, are not afraid to commit it again. So the direct call from the Congolese is the implementation of the UN mapping exercise report, which calls for an international tribunal for Congo, which will make sure that those who committed crimes, be it Congolese, be it neighboring countries, be it even multinationals, right, that any actors will see that they're in court and will be held accountable. To have that process, Congo cannot just do an international tribunal for the Congo, right? Because some of the people who committed the crimes are not in the Congo. So they will need the partnership
an
of
international system. Yes, that means that we need to come together as Africans. Eric,
That's incredible. You know that the Congo is still being operated on as it was, as Africa was, you know, being pillaged even before in the 80s, where these imperialists came and put in infrastructure to help them to extract resources. I saw the other day when a report that choppers just fly from across the border, go into eastern DRC, pack the minerals and then fly out. No payment of taxes, no payment of anything to the government. This is just nuts.
But Eric, that also means that the only people who have access are those rich people who have choppers, meaning that any of the poor Congolese cannot really have access to any of these minerals.
Perhaps, of course, since we have... Yep.
What Eric said is so central and it's vital for people to understand. Kambali had run down the corporate interests, Zith and the Department of Justice in the U.S. Finding them. They're now called sculptor capital. But what you said, Eric, is really key for people to understand. We have to remember, Congo wasn't created, the modern Congo wasn't created by Congolese. It was created by Europeans. And there was a design and an imprint, a framework that was laid out. And that framework was consistent with the previous 300 years of history, where human bodies were being extracted out of the Congo region. And that the transition from human bodies to rubber, to copper, and all those other minerals. So that framework of extraction is still very much in place, irrespective of who comes into the Congo. And as Kambali articulated, and as Professor Nzengola Ntalaja in his book, The Congo from Leopold to Kabila lays out, the people's struggle is to control and determine the affairs of the Congo. In the midst of a geostrategic battle for her natural resources. One thing that Africans ought to be very clear about is the centrality and the importance of Congo to the future of the African continent. You referenced Kwame Nkrumah's challenge of Congo. He lays it out. At the center of the United States of Africa, of the Pan-African project, is the Congo, where Congo is going to be the capital of the United States of Africa and its strategic location in the heart of Africa, the size of Western Europe, the tremendous, spectacular wealth that is there, was going to serve as the industrial engine for the development and the advancement of the African continent. So when Frantz Fanon said in his Toward African Revolutions, the fate of all of us is at stake in the Congo, he's saying that to each and every one of us as Africans, that when we look at the Congo, we have to see Congo as being central to the future, the liberation of Africa, and by extension, the African world. So that centrality of Congo to our future was laid out by the best that we've produced in terms of independence leaders. The Fanons, Ahmed Sékou Touré of Guinea, Modibo Keïta of Mali, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. That was and they rallied around the Congo. They sent figures like André Blouin to support Patrice Lumumba in his quest for liberation. Now, fast forward to today, what we see, those so-called Pan-Africanists, those who have been dubbed Pan-Africanists by outsiders, they're ravaging the Congo. The Musevenis, the Kagames, they're picking apart the Congo. Museveni said, Congo is like a banana plantation. You go in and get what you want. Now compare to what Museveni said to what Fanon said. Fanon said, the fate of all of us is at stake in the Congo. Museveni said, the banana plantation, go in and get what you want. That's why if you look since 1996, the gold exports, the timber exports in Uganda have shot up because they're ravaging the Congo. Congo even had to take Uganda to the International Court of Justice for the pillaging and for the crimes that they've committed in the Congo. If you look at the exports of Rwanda, the cassiterite, the tin, the coltan, Rwanda has become the largest producer of coltan in the world. They're plundering the Congo. And they find that it's so critical. Think about this. Both Rwanda and Uganda invaded the Congo twice, 1996, 1998 together. Since that time, they supported militia groups in the Congo. However, because the resources of the Congo is so critical, they fought each other in the Congo. Rwanda and Uganda, what they call a 6-day war in 2000, where they killed thousands of Congolese and injured scores over minerals in the Congo. So what Africans at the grassroots, at the base, ought to be challenging their leaders, those who are seeking to plunder the Congo, ought to be confronting the narrative that they're putting out there. Keeping clean cities in Kigali, clean Kigali is not doesn't make you a Pan-Africanist, right? If you have clean cities in Kigali, but yet you're up into the British Commonwealth, you sought membership to be in the British Commonwealth, you sought membership to be in the French Francophonie and the presidency of the Francophonie. I can't imagine Nkrumah trying to be up in the British Commonwealth and in the Francophonie, or a Sékou Touré. So it is vital for young Africans to understand the importance of Congo to the future of Africa, to understand what our forefathers and foremothers did in rallying around the Congo, embracing the Congo, saw it as central and critical to the advancement of the continent as a whole. So, and not just the continent as a whole. If we look at Congo being a part of the second largest rainforest in the world, vital in combating the climate crisis, a space that sequesters more carbon than all of the rainforests combined, right? Amazon, Borneo, home to the largest tropical peatlands in the world, the size of England, that contains, it's a virtual carbon bomb. It traps carbon that's equivalent to about 20 years of pollution coming out of U.S. usage of combustion engines. So it's not only important to Africans, it's important to the planet, right? That protecting the Congo rainforest is vital to the future of humanity. And at the same time, we're all talking about a green energy transition, a clean energy transition. There is no green energy transition, clean energy transition without the Congo, producing 70% of the world's cobalt, more than all the countries combined, a critical ingredient in the rechargeable batteries. right? So we
Yeah.
talk about combating the climate crisis, dealing with the green transition. You can't have that discussion. You talk about the corporate media, they can't have that discussion without talking about the Congo. And at the same time, what Kambali talked about, the Lobito rail corridor, where they're shipping copper from Kolwezi out to the Lobito port along the rail line that's recently developed. First shipment that occurred in December by Ivanhoe Mines. The CEO of Ivanhoe Mines, Mr. Friedland, was just on Bloomberg News talking about how this is amazing for his corporation, for Ivanhoe, not for the Congolese people. But here we see again that Lobito corridor that was developed supported by the United States and the European Union is a part of that geostrategic battle for Congo's resources. That came
All
out of
facts. All facts.
the global partnership for investment in infrastructure. The partnership for global investment in infrastructure is the United States response to China's Belt and Road Initiative. And it's being played
All
out right
facts.
now in the
Yeah.
Congo. So
Yeah.
this is important
All facts,
not
man.
only to Congolese, but also to Africans. And we're talking about high stakes geostrategic battle for the control of the resources. And the central question that remains, how is it that Congolese are going to control and determine their own affairs? We are arguing that we need to build a global constituency to support the
Moritz,
Congolese who are on the front lines fighting to control and determine the affairs of the Congo. The Congo movement today is as important as the Free South Africa movement was yesterday, and we need Africans rallying behind Congolese in that undertaking.
If we could switch gears, Maurice, that's all facts. Definitely a lot of gems there. If we could switch gears because of the savagery that is ongoing in the Congo and the ignorance to it all, we have about 7 million people now internally displaced in the Congo. And these are Congolese. We have about 1 million others who have escaped from other places coming to the Congo. And the interconnectedness of Africa now. If the Congo is not free, the rest of Africa cannot
Sure.
be free. If I could ask a sensitive question, not to get embroiled into the web of haters who talk about the pro-Palestine agenda in a negative way and compare it to Africa, and they talk about this, oppression Olympics. That why not the Congo? Why is just Gaza being covered? If I could put it to you, the question is not why the Congo crisis has been ignored or not covered as much, but since that the oppression that is ongoing in Gaza has gained extensive coverage, we've seen coverage from all corners. Why does that get more coverage? Or if I could put it better, why does that earn coverage and not the raping and killing industries of the Congo?
Just a quick and a short answer to that question. The United States, the empire is directly involved in arming, financing, backing Israel, covering for a genocidal regime. So when you have the United States directly involved in a conflict of that nature, it's going to bring all of that attention from the corporate media. That's a major reason why we see that the extent of the coverage that we see around Gaza. That's just a short answer, and maybe Kambali can add
Thank
others
you.
as well.
Thank you for keeping it short. In the interest of time, let's try and run through the rest of the questions. We have quite a few.
Sure,
William?
sure. Now, mine is, Africa was colonized, so was Asia, so was Latin America by all these European colonial powers. But, we have the Chinese who are colonized. I mean, Britain took Hong Kong for quite a while. But the China today is not the China of 100 years ago. The Brazil of today is not the Brazil of 100 years ago. Yet, in DRC, it's like the colonizers never left. So my question will be, why is DRC almost unique in this respect?
I can try to take that.
Go ahead.
Either Maurice or Kumbale, either is fine, sorry.
You can't talk about the economic situation of the Congo without looking at what they've actually have done in the country. And I was speaking to a Congolese elder once, when I was discussing, I said, Mobutu, he stole $7 billion of wealth when he left. And he looked at me and said, What's your evidence of that, right? And that made me think, and he started sharing with me some facts that made me myself actually look back at what happened in Congo's economy. And when I realized what happened in Congo's economy, I was blown away, right? That Congo in the 70s was at the peak of its economy, especially around the production of copper and cobalt, right? Few things happened during that time. There was the Shaba 1 and Shaba 2. These were two wars in the Congo where the West even came and supported Mobutu during that time. And that actually caused the fall of the price of cobalt at the end of the 70s going into the 80s. The World Bank actually hired a consultant. His name is Erwin Blumenthal. And they hired Erwin Blumenthal to come and study Congo's economy and figure out what we could do to improve the economy. Erwin Blumenthal published a damaging report, right? Where literally telling the World Bank, no, this economy is going to crash. We need to reform it. That's early 80s, 82, 83. After the report was published, just as this is happening actually to Ghana right now. Most people don't even realize. The same thing that happened to Zaire, which is now Congo, is happening to Ghana right now. After that study, the World Bank forced the Congolese government to make the central bank governor to be the IMF World Bank consultant, Erwin Blumenthal. And Erwin Blumenthal implemented the structural adjustment program. And the structural adjustment program had an impact on the industries in the Congo. It had an impact on the military, right? It had an impact on education because a lot of the funding, like from the 83 all the way to the end of the fall of the wall of Berlin, Congo changed. I listened to Ibrahim Traoré's interview with Alain Foucault. He said the same exact thing when he was speaking about the challenge of the Burkinabe military fighting the so-called terrorists, these so-called jihadists, that he connected the inadequacy of his military to the structural adjustment program of the 80s. So the structural adjustment program is just one thing that I'm mentioning. We can talk about aid package. We can talk about the wars that have decimated, right? All these things have affected the country to the point where we are in 2024, we are wondering how come Congo can't get up by itself? Now, there are so many different elements. One of them is how they affected the economy. And the others are the different interference, opposing leaders, imposing ways of governance, and so on. So, and Congolese have been under constant attack. So while on the economic side, right, we are saying this is what's happening, but on the people side, Congolese have always resisted, right? They resist the government, they resisted the Mobutu government, who supported the Mobutu government, the West, right? And whenever we had a chance to choose our leaders, just remember what happened to him, he was assassinated. During these past 20 years where we have had the conflict, there have been pockets of resistance. Even now, right? We spoke about Congolese protesting in front of Western embassies. But we're not speaking about what the Congolese were doing the week before protests in before the Western embassies. The week before, a group of young Congolese went in front of the parliament, staged a protest, right? Where they were calling out our government, the Congolese government, by saying that the town of Bunagana has been under rebel control for 600 days. That we need to do something. You know what happened to these young Congolese? 7 of them were arrested, right? And they were taken to the secret, our secret service that we call ANER. And one of them has just published a document, Fred Bauma published a document saying that he was tortured while he was there. And a week later, I'm very happy. There are many Congolese who are clear about what the imperialists are, right? I'm very happy they are going in front of the US embassy and saying that we know the US supports Rwanda. We know the EU supports Rwanda. But we cannot forget, even while they're saying this, the Congolese on the inside are also challenging their own government, right? And that same government, in the contradiction of what's happening, that same government is also supported by the West, which is a very fascinating thing to think about, right? Is we know that we've had rig elections in the DRC, but Western countries, every time we have rig elections, what do? They come out
They
and say,
back
well,
the leader.
exactly. So we have to look at the Congolese resistance is in a way where inside of the country, those who are able to have space to speak up, it's a very small group because you are dealing with the state. They are still doing that, so we should shine light on that. We should shine light on the Congolese who are connecting the conflict to the imperialist forces. We should also shine light on the corporations on the outside. So it's a multi-pronged approach of looking at what the people are doing, but it has historical ties of why Congo is here today. Yes, economic ties also, but Congolese are resisting in the process with the hope of solidarity of others so that we can tackle all the challenges that we have on the country. I don't know if Maurice,
if Kambale, if I could just extrapolate on that on the politics. I was in Goma in December. I covered about a week just before the elections, and immediately after landing in the airport, I saw soldiers on the back of vehicles, not just holding AK-47s but heavy artillery, machine guns, and just patrolling the city. And on the campaign trail, candidate President Tshisekedi now, said something which people are really shocked by. He said that he is going to attack Rwanda if he is going to be reelected. And he actually went as far as comparing President Kagame to one of the 20th century's worst villains, that is Hitler. So he said that Rwanda's Kagame is going to face the same fate that Hitler, met, which is killing. So do you think that the recent escalation, because just after the election, we had this escalation from M23 and in Goma, Masisi, things are really blowing up there. Do you think that this recent escalation has anything to do with that threat from President Tshisekedi?
Absolutely not. I mean, I have to make a disclaimer. I'm not the spokesperson of Tshisekedi, right? And I do think that he's a populist. He used populist statements for the elections. And he said that he's going to attack Rwanda. Every Congolese is saying that to him right now. So you say that if one Congolese die, you will go to Kigali. We're still not seeing you in Kigali. So Congolese are putting already pressure on his populist statement that he's not backing up with the same power, right? But I don't think that the escalation of the M23 has anything to do with the current situation. And I think also, as we continue to discuss even in the future, that we don't call them the M23. It's very important, right? Because when you call them the M23, you think that they are some new rebel group. Sultani Makenga, who's the leader of the M23, was in a rebel group called AFDL in 1996 with Laurent Désiré Kabila. So why are we calling it M23 today? AFDL became RCD with Sultani Makenga. Why are we calling him M23? RCD became CNDP in the 2008 with Laurent Kunda, who's still in so-called house arrest in Kigali. Why are we calling them that? Today we are calling them M23. And from Nairobi, we had Congolese who came and called themselves Alliance Fleuve Congo. So tomorrow, M23 may be called AFC, right? That they changed the name. So we need to first be clear that this is a rebel group, which is a proxy rebel militia for Rwanda, right? But every time we have elections, if you look at the 2012 election, you will notice that few months after the 2012 election, that's when the M23 was launched. That there is always some type of uprising that takes place, which distracts us for what is really at stake, right? And the comparison that he made, if we just take it at face value, he went to the extreme to talk about Hitler, but we're talking about a modern day genocide. The UN mapping exercise report states that what's happening in the Congo are war crimes, crimes against humanity, and possible genocide if proven in a competent court, and charges Rwanda for having committed genocide in the Congo. That's not the Congolese people saying that, right? That's the UN for human rights.
That's the UN.
Yeah.
But how come, up until now, there is no accountability? So the escalation of the conflict now, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think he has, and I'll try to be very quick on this one. I think it has everything to do with the ceasefire deal that the United States organized between Rwanda and Congo. Before the election, when the Chinese drone, the CH-4 Chinese drone, shot and killed Rwandan soldiers on Congolese soil in November. Something most people do not realize, that Congo bought 3 drones. One of them actually shot a Rwandan Defense Forces soldier in DRC, which caused a fear in Washington that because the soldiers were killed on Congolese soil, they were afraid that Kigali was going to respond. And they sent somebody there. Somebody very important that most people never even heard. I never even knew her name. I knew the position existed, but I didn't know who she was. They sent Haverhill Haynes. And Haverhill Haynes is the director of national intelligence of the United States at the National Security Council. She's the head of 17 Secret Service agencies, intelligence agencies of the United States, which includes the CIA. Pretty much, she's the boss of the CIA at the White House. She flew to Kigali on November 19th. She flew to Kinshasa on November 20th. On November 21st, when she was flying out, the White House put out a press statement discussing what she has just accomplished, that she signed a cease agreement deal between Rwanda and Congo, not the 23, right? Rwanda and Congo up until December 31st of 2023. We are in February. The ceasefire deal is no longer in place.
Yes.
Right? They agree. You are not going to fight during the elections. Let's make sure that our men get elected.
Because they want their person in.
Yes. The M23 continue to do the usual blackmailing that they've done. They're going to put pressure on the Congolese government. There will be dialogue. They will take the rebels, put them in the Congolese military. They'll take some of them, put them in ministries and offices. And then a few years from now, if they use that approach, the fundamental problem will not be dealt with. But how can it be dealt with? We know the aggressor nations. The M23 are crossing the border from Bunagana. That's the Ugandan border, right? So they are coming literally from Uganda.
And Musavuli, do you think that with that...
If I may, Seifu, just in the interest of time, I know you have a couple of more questions there. Do you mind just jumping to the MONUSCO one, which I know is a big one on your list?
All right. Musavuli, and maybe also Maurice, you can come in on this. What do you think is the role of MONUSCO in all this? Having spoken about the UN Security Council and the head of the CIA who was sent to DRC and to Rwanda, of course, to broker a ceasefire deal, but only for a short period of time. What is the role of MONUSCO? Are they really keeping peace in this region, or is there something else that, we need to dispel here today?
In the interest of time, the short answer is they're obviously not keeping peace. They're on the way out. They're rolling down this year. They've been there for 20 years at $1 billion, over 20 years, $1 billion a year. So they're probably the one ray of light with MONUSCO is when in 2012, when they changed their mandate to an offensive mandate, and at the behest of the African Union, initiative coming out of the African Union, established the Force Intervention Brigade, where they brought in South African soldiers, Malawi soldiers, Tanzanian soldiers to confront the M23, which was part of an overall strategy, a diplomatic push, the bringing in of the Force Intervention Brigade, and heroic military fighting on the part of the Congolese soldiers led by Mamadou Ndala. So it was a combination of things that brought an end to the M23 at that time in 2013. So the UN, MONUSCO's forces are not. Just look at the Congolese people. They've demonstrated against them. They said, "We want you out. You're not bringing peace. You're not helping us." So I think that's really where you need to look to get your answer. But I just wanted to say something quickly about that. Figures like Mamadou Ndala, who were just. There's a film made about him called "This Is Congo," that documents what he did, and it touches into the question that was asked earlier. I mean, we were giving examples from Brazil and China and all. Actually, we don't have to leave the continent. We just have to. We go to Burkina Faso from 1983 to 1987, led by Thomas Sankara. We saw the advancements that were made in terms of the conditions of living for women, addressing the environment for workers, the building of infrastructure. When Africans are left providing even a modicum of freedom to pursue their own vision of development, there's hardly a better model than Sankara. Within 4 years, right? 4 years, the achievements that he made. Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, the development that he made in Ghana, when in terms of building dams and roads and infrastructure, the whole bit. So there are models on the African continent, within Congo itself, that can bring about change. It's just that these compradors, the elites, who are more tethered to the metropole, who are tethered to international finance capital, who are tethered to the empire, they work against the interests of the masses of Africans, of the working class, of the oppressed masses. So that's why we're saying, I know we're coming to the end, as a solidarity institution, Friends of the Congo, we're mobilizing people to support those models on the ground that we know have the solutions for the challenges that Congo faces. That they just need to be scaled. They need to be supported. Because think about it. You have Kambali mentioned sculpture capital, Dan Gertler, Glencore, all the United Nations mentioned some 85 corporations. All these corporations are coming behind Congo's elite to facilitate the pilfer and plundering of Congo. So we need to rally the masses. We need to rally the global constituency behind those Congolese that have the solutions for their country, that are on the front line, bringing about change, models that we know that can not only change Congo, but can transform the African continent. So I really wanted to end on that, at least from our side, on that note, that the solutions are there. They need the support on the part of a global constituency, the support in terms of challenging the forces that are against the Congolese people, multilateral institutions, corporations, foreign governments, empire, US, UK, European Union, and need to bring support behind the people who are on the front lines in North Kivu, in the front lines in the rainforest, in the old Oriental province, the Chopo province, on the front lines in the old Katanga province. So that's really the message that we would like to send from Friends of the Congo to Africans, people of goodwill around the world. Now, leave with a quote that I think is so appropriate from Patrice Lumumba in his last letter to his wife, Pauline, where he said, he was speaking to the Congolese people, he said, we're not alone. Africa, Asia, free and liberated people from every corner of the world will be found by the side of the Congolese. So we're making that appeal for you to be found by the side of the Congolese as they face these enormous challenges, enormous forces against their attempt to control and determine their own affairs for the benefit of Congo, the sons and daughters of Congo, and for the benefit of Africa overall.
Thank you so much. That was Maurice Kani, who was joining us from the Friends of Congo. We also had Kambale Musavuli, who's a representative of Pan-Africanism today, and also from here on studio, I've been Sefu Sani, and
I'm Eric Gavala. And I wanted to say just before I have William come in, that, we'll definitely invite, Maurice and Kambale again. It has been a wealth of information. I'm sure we've all benefited as well as the audience. So we're definitely going to invite them again. And William, do you have something to say?
Look, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation for me. I mean, I knew tidbits of the Gatla Glencore connection, but seeing the whole chain basically from the mines in DRC to the Tesla car leaving the factory, that has been incredibly insightful. That has been my biggest takeaway from this conversation today. And I really hope we have a follow-up conversation much, much sooner.
We're definitely going to invite you again and again and again, because the expertise and the way you expertly answered the questions, we're definitely having thoughts that we must do this again and again. To our audience, definitely join us again. We're going to have Pan-African Attitude episode 3 coming up. Please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, subscribe to all our channels. You can find us all across. If you think of a social media platform, we are there. So please check that subscribe button, follow us, and you're going to see you next time. Thank you so much.
Peace.
Peace.
Thank you.